starts, you know.
That's good.
Good.
Just an Amish is just a conservative Republican. No, he's not. And that's why a lot of the libertarians, even though he has a good shot, don't want
put it up there and get
he
set.
can do damage to the party.
And then do I keep it up like that, or do I turn it?
Type in there, say we'll get started in just a moment.
But
How do you want to read it? I'm libertarian.
Huh?
but too many people already think libertarians are
Okay.
Republican light. It's like, no.
No, there's difference.
Especially since this session, the House of Representatives devoted more time debating bills geared towards keeping libertarians off the ballot than any other topic.
We're kind of split up around the room. Is there any way we can get closer together? No, I don't want to force anybody to move. I will never force you to move. But I will politely request you to get closer. That's what I like to see. Don't listen to me. All right, so I think I'm going to go ahead and get started, everybody. I appreciate everybody being here. It's about 2:20. We are live streaming on the Derrick Broze for Mayor for Houston, the Facebook page, that you guys are probably following already. If anybody out there wants to share it, for anybody who might not have been here, that would be appreciated. And we will be posting this on the YouTube channel, all that good stuff. So I'm speaking to a few friends who I haven't seen in a while. I'm speaking to a few new friends. And we're speaking to whoever's online and whoever's going to watch this later. So I'm going to kind of I have a few points that I definitely want to make sure to say today. This is, of course, our first event. Like, can we just, we get a little energy, a little, like, I'm excited to do this. I'm running for mayor of Houston. I never thought I'd say that, but, and I want to explain to you guys all about what I'm doing here, what are the goals that I have. We have 5.5 months till the election, or just about 5.5 months. November 5th, early voting starts in October 21st, I think. That gives the whole summer, August, September, to spread these ideas, to talk about these different issues. And I want to tell you guys a bit about who I am, what I'm doing. I know most of you are familiar with my work, and if you've been through the website at all or seen any of the videos, you've kind of heard some of this stuff now, but I just want to just share a little bit again so that when we get to the issues that I'm focusing on, there's 9 different issues that I have listed on the website. 9 different things that we're focused on, and of course I'm open to more topics of discussion. When we get to that point, I want you to be able to understand why I'm choosing those issues, why I'm focusing on the different things, and I think it'll help if you understand why I'm doing this. And then we'll talk about some goals and how we can collaborate, because the way I see it, this is just the beginning right here. The campaign is just kicking off for me. Some of the other guys have been campaigning for months. But this is our very first event, and this is going to be the first of probably at least 5 or 6 monthly events, and then we'll see how big it grows. If there's a lot more support, what's up, brother?
Amen.
Good to see you. And if it keeps growing, then we'll keep having events. We're going to try a lot of creative ideas. We're going to try to run a campaign, and I very much hesitate to call it a political campaign, in a way that you've never seen before, that nobody else has ever seen before. So we're going to do a lot of creative things. I'm looking to use memes. I'm looking to use graphics, videos. I'm looking to get out on the streets and talk to people. We can do a hot air balloon. We can do whatever we want. We can think of all kinds of creative ways to reach people because, as I said, I'm not a politician. I'm not trying to be a politician. If by somehow I manage to beat a career politician and a self-funded millionaire and the other people and end up winning this thing, well then we could really change the way this city looks and maybe set a standard for some other places. But the goal of this campaign is really to get these ideas out. All the different issues, the different things that brought you guys out here. Just a couple of moments ago, I had a phone call from a couple who said they couldn't make it today. The wife is about to go into labor, so hopefully she's having a good day. She's about to go into labor, but he wanted to reach out to me and say, hey, I live over off the southwest side, and I care about 5G, and I care about health freedom and these kinds of things, and I appreciate your campaign, and there's people in our neighborhood who support you. How can we get involved? So I've been getting a lot of this just over the last week. It's been really cool to just put this idea out there We've been discussing it behind closed doors for a couple of months, this potential of doing something like this, and to put it out there and to see people respond in this way has been very encouraging, I'll say. So before we get further into that, again, I want to tell you guys a little bit about myself. So I'm 34 years old. I've been in Houston forever. I grew up off the west side of town, A-Leaf area. Lived there for the first 10 years of my life. My family moved me to Katy, lived there till I was 18, graduated from high school there, and then left as soon as I could, as quick as I could, and came into the city of Houston, and I've been living in and around Houston for since that time, so for the last 15 years or so. And I've lived specifically right here in the downtown area for the last decade. And one of the issues you're going to hear me talk about, of course, is cannabis decriminalization and self-ownership, these kinds of ideas. One of the reasons that's important to me is because I grew up in a family with several drug addicts. My birth father being a drug addict, grew up visiting him in and out of prison. I sort of, that was just a part of my reality as a very young child, having uncles addicted to drugs, seeing uncles drunk, go to jail, seeing my father in and out of prison. So it's very much been a part of my life, not just the prison industrial complex, but the drug wards specifically. People dealing with drug addictions and people being locked up for those addictions and not getting any better, just going in and out, in and out, in and out, and all those traumas. I've had several friends die of different drug overdoses over the years, including right on the street. And last summer, my birth father unfortunately passed away from a drug overdose. He's something he dealt with his entire life till his death. And so those experiences really shaped me as a young kid. I started to get really depressed. I tried to kill myself a couple times when I was a teenager. And by the time I got out of high school, I just dove right into drugs. I would try anything you put in front of me. And sooner or later, I got hooked on crystal meth. When I was 20 years old, January 2005, I started trying crystal. Within 10 months, I was locked up. I had lost my job, lost my relationship, was homeless, was just, ended up getting stuck into this whole world of drugs and dealing drugs and just all kinds of crazy things that I will write about one day. And that ended up with me getting locked up. And between November 2005 and October 2008, I was locked up a total of 18 months, in and out of prison, 11 months, out for 5, locked up for 3 months, out for a year, locked up for 5 more. And it was kind of a really important, pivotal experience for me, I'll say. I turned 21 while I was locked up. And it was that experience that first started to get me to question everything around me. Not only like, how the heck did I get here? I've been angry at my parents and my family for their drug problem my whole life and being in prison, and here I am, I find myself locked up for the same things. And that was the beginning of me starting to do a lot of introspection, and just, I definitely will say meditation helped me, just journaling helped me, just getting through, working through my thoughts. And I got out October 2008 for the final time, right as Obama was getting elected. It was a really interesting time to be coming into the world, especially with like open eyes now, starting to question things about the world, not just the drug war, but everything around me. And then I got off parole June 2009. And by the end of that year, by the end of 2009, I had just read a few books, watched a few documentaries, gone down those rabbit holes, and my whole life was different. And I started questioning everything about the world and how could I make it better on a local level? How could I reach people here in Houston that might be concerned about police violence, or might be concerned about, various health issues, or might be concerned about the growing corporate and government power and these kinds of ideas. And so I started a blog called the Houston Freethinkers and started blogging for a few months in the beginning of 2010. Along that way, I met Micah and many other people. And from 2010, 2011 till pretty much I'd say 2018, we were involved in all kinds of different activism in the city, from benefit shows and skill shares and community gardens to civil disobedience and arrests and protests and rallies and you name it, everything but this, everything but running for office. And then along the way I got into journalism. I've got into writing articles. I've written 4 books now. I've made many documentaries and just learned a lot of different skills. I didn't go to school for any of this stuff. It just started coming from a passion and a desire to do something, to learn about what's going on in the world and to try to improve the community around me and improve Houston, as well as connecting with other activists all around the world. So it's been a wonderful, beautiful journey. But the reason I share, my family's history with drug addiction and myself getting into drug addiction and getting locked up, it's because that really does influence the things that I'm doing today and why I'm running for mayor. Because I know that when I got locked up, the reason I was using various drugs and getting sucked into that world is because I had all kinds of emotional traumas and things from that experience growing up that I didn't really have the tools to deal with, and so drugs were an escape. It was like, whoa, this makes me feel amazing. So the answer must be to stick as many of these things as possible inside my body. That'll fix everything. And I quickly learned that obviously that's not the answer. But I've met in my work in the last 10 years, I've met so many different drug addicts. I've met people who say they've never taken a drug in their life, but this is what they struggled with, and this is how my story helps them connect with that, right? So it's been very important for me to be open about that. And so this is why I'm saying I'm running a political campaign that is completely unlike anything else you're going to hear from these other guys. I've got tattoos, I've got long hair, I'm a felon, I've been addicted to drugs, and I have a past that plenty of people who might want to attack me might try to bring up, because the Derrick Broze you're talking to today is not the same Derrick Broze that was around 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 15 years ago. And there's definitely been a lot of issues I've had to work on forgiving myself for the ways I've treated people over the years when I was going through my struggles. But ultimately, I realized that as I'm trying to empower myself and heal myself and work on bettering the world, that being open about that is what's necessary. We don't need to go around BSing each other, which is what, in my experience as a journalist, going to these events, going to the city council and going to the mayoral events, I come in there with my small camera, with my tattoos, with just my look and myself, and I get these, who is this outsider kind of approach from the city council and from the mayor and them. And I love it. I love coming in there and just, they don't know how, they wish they could get rid of me, but they don't know how to. And all I gotta do is put a camera in their face and ask a real question and watch them squirm. And it's like, it's that easy? That's all you have to do? So when I started thinking about, when we were tossing this idea around, I was telling Chris earlier that this whole idea for running for a campaign, it sort of came out of some conversations between Micah and I, and around a couple months ago, you guys may have seen the video where the mayor got upset at city council, where he was upset that the other council member didn't call him mayor. He's like, that's Mayor Turner to you, okay? I'm the CEO of this city. And he just was like, whoa, okay? He sort of showed his true colors in my view, and it was the video was, it was kind of silly, and it went out there. And when I saw that, I just started thinking, like, the experiences I've had with him, with the past mayors, and just with the city in general, it's like, yeah, they really think that there's somebody, they're better than us, kind of thing. And I was just sort of joking, like, somebody needs to run for the nobodies, who's going to run for the nobodies out there? Just the regular people, right? Because these people think that there's something special, and they don't need to listen to me. They can just put me at the end of city council, they can just ignore me, they can ignore your phone calls, they can ignore your emails, and that's how they're used to running things. I was just at the State of the City address last week, downtown Marriott Hotel, and this is all of the city officials, the city council, the mayor, the president of the police union, the police chief, the who's who of power and authorities in the city, all meeting downtown with, the rest of the business people that support them. They're, the people they really care about. They weren't meeting with you guys. They weren't meeting with, regular Houstonians to give the state of the city. They were meeting with the people that they're dependent upon to build the city that they want. And the city they want, obviously, is not the same city that I think the average Houstonian wants. So all of these things motivated me to decide to say, you know what, I'm going to put my hat in the ring. And I've spent the last 10 years of my books and my kind of activist work and philosophical work telling people that I think voting is really not effective, and that voting is not really the strongest way we can measure our action, right? I've put a lot of energy into that. You can find half a dozen videos of me talking about this, and I still stand by those statements. But I also have always told people, if you're going to put any energy into the political system, focus as locally as possible. Because while I think it might be a waste of time to try to run for president and think you could change that whole system, on a local level, there's almost 4 million people in the city of Houston. There's 1 million registered voters. And in the election, 200,000 people voted. So I think in one way that's a measure that, yeah, people aren't happy. They can't even get excited enough to go out to, even the people who are registered don't even make an effort to vote. They're just like, what? Oh, well, that passed? Oh, my bad. And it's because all of the focus of these other campaigns, and I want you to know about this, over the next 5.5 months, you're not going to hear me mention these other people much, because it's not about them. It's not about trying to have this, let's sling some mud. Of course I'm going to call it out when I see it, right? Otherwise I wouldn't be me. But it's not about them. It's about these ideas that we're going to get into today. But I do want to say that, we're running different campaigns. We're making different efforts, right? And so if I can put my effort, my energy into doing something locally, and we can get people excited enough to care, whether you actually go and vote on November 5th or not, but just to care about what's going on in the city, then to me, we've already won. You know what I mean? I'm going to spend the next 5.5 months spreading these ideas and encouraging people to pay attention and support me however you can, whether that means sharing videos, sharing things on Facebook, donating, coming to volunteer, go out and talk to people, or whatever other ideas and strategies we come up with. But at the end of the day, I just think it's important to see that the mayor and these other folks have a different idea of what they think this city should be like. And I'm not trying to come out and promise anything or really, like act as if I can save the day. That's what a politician does. They want you to believe that with a vote they're going to fix the whole city and fix the whole country or fix everything, and that's just not reality. But we can talk about a lot of important issues, and if somehow this was able to happen, we could really change things. We could really turn the city into a completely new direction. So, thank you, I appreciate that. So I bring up the voting to say is that when if you go out there and Google or DuckDuckGo search my name and you see, wait, this guy's running for mayor and he's telling me not to vote. What is up with this? I don't want you to be surprised by anything, all right? Like, yeah, those are positions that I stand for, and I think that this is the city I've been grown and raised, and honestly, unless I was to win this race or something, who knows? Like, I plan to leave Houston in the next year or two. Like, I have some other places to be and some more lessons to learn. But I figured this is a good way to use the network that I've built and to use my message and my words and my vessel to spread these ideas. So I'm not asking you guys to endorse me, to believe in me, to think that I'm perfect or anything. I'll put my flaws out. I'll be the first person to put those all out there, right? All I'm saying is if you care about the ideas that we're about to discuss, then put some energy into this, We can do something really special that the city's never seen over the next 5 months. And I already have the support of many of the people at websites, big Facebook pages and websites in the independent and alternative media who are ready to amplify this even further so that we get people who aren't even in Houston talking about this. We've already got one $500 donation from somebody in London, for example. That helped pay for our website, to get that nice website that so many people seem to enjoy. That came from somebody who they're going to have no effect on this race as far as voting. But because of them, we now have a website that looks great, that can compete and can get out there and get these ideas spread. And so things like that have an effect, and people putting in time and energy, everything that you guys have done. I really do appreciate you guys. I've been off Facebook for over a year, and so that was another sort of compromise for myself. Like, all right, if I'm going to do this, I probably got to have a Facebook page, and so I'm doing it. And I hate that. I don't like the company. I don't like what they represent. But I'll put that aside for the next 5 months so that we can do something bigger than just my simple principles. All right, so self-ownership, I'm going to tell you about that briefly, and then we're going to talk about these issues, these 9 different issues that I've had listed. And again, I'm also open to other issues that concern you. Like maybe there's something I'm missing out on or something that should be addressed. I'm going to use that. I'm going to use your suggestions to see how we can work together. Because, as I said, we have 5 months till the races, till the election. But I've already been accepted into 3 different debates, and probably will get accepted into more. They're not going to be till the fall, so we're going to be at one at UHD, University of Houston downtown, one at University of Houston, and another one organized by the Greater Houston Pachyderm Club. I'm not sure where that's at, but those are all going to be in October when early voting actually starts. So in the meantime, the goal is just to keep building this momentum and spreading this message. And again, if you guys have resources, then let's talk about that. So what we're going to do in the meantime is spread these ideas, get people paying attention, and then hopefully by the time the debates are around, we can actually have a chance to be with the mayor and these other people and show you how they have nothing to say about all the issues we're about to discuss. That they don't believe that you own yourself, they don't believe that you have a right to choose what you put in your body or how you treat your body, or they don't care about bettering this community as a whole, they don't care about protecting you and your families. And I'm saying this based on their own actions. Now, this is not just an attack, this is based on what they have shown us, what we have seen from the mayor himself and from what the other candidates have said. And I will say, besides Bill King and Tony Busby, I want to give credit. There are actually 4 other candidates besides me running. You're not going to hear about them in the mainstream. I'll even post them out there because I think you guys should know all the choices when it comes, right? Like I think I'm different from everybody else running, but there are 4 other people besides Bill King, Tony Busby, and Sylvester Turner running that are also grassroots campaigns. So this is a part of the kind of control system. Lots of people understand that the mainstream corporate media is controlled. Well, it happens on the local level too here. I'm going to get off on a brief tangent before we get into the issues. Did anybody happen to see me speak on Isaiah Carey about 5G a few months back? Maybe 1 or 2 of you did, right? I appreciate that. I reached out to him. He invited me to come on the show. We did that. And every day they post their archives. So they have a show, they interview some people, they post it on the website. So I was waiting for them to post my archive so I could share it out with people. And a day passes and it doesn't go up. I reach out to Isaiah Carey and say, hey man, do you know when that video is going to go up? He says, oh, we're trying to find it, we're looking for it. They misplaced it or something, okay? 5 days pass and I'm starting to get suspicious. I don't want to start conspiracy theorizing too soon, but I looked at Isaiah Carey's Instagram and I noticed he's got quite a few pictures with the mayor. And I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but all I know is that to this day, the archive with my video has never been posted. The only reason I have it is because Greg over there happened to DVR the video, and then I just set my camera up in front of his TV and recorded it so I could put it online. Otherwise, I would have lost that whole interview. Going on a local Houston station, Fox 26, to talk about these issues. And now, another reason to maybe suspect that there's something amiss is about 3 weeks after I came on, somebody else came on to talk about 5G and to tell you how great AT&T's new service was, and guess what? That video is on the website. But for some reason, the day that I came on to talk about 5G, they misplaced it. So think whatever you want. All I'm saying is that this is definitely going to be a battle locally to try to get this message out. I need your support in that effort because, I have my strategies and my networks and everything like that, but we have to show them, like even emailing Isaiah Carey and saying, hey, how come you haven't talked to this candidate or whatever? There's other, Channel 13, they're doing an interview with all the other candidates saying, we're going to show you all the candidates. I won't be surprised if they don't reach out to me. They claim they're going to be interviewing all the candidates. We'll see. So my point in saying that is that, this is definitely going to be an uphill battle. But I do think it'll be a fun uphill battle, and if we do it together, it'll be kind of fun to look around and be like, dang, we reached this many people over the next 5.5 months. We came together and we worked together on something bigger. It's not about Derrick Broze, it's about these ideas and about this message. So what are the issues? What is this message? Number one, the first thing that I put on the website is a moratorium on 5G. Is there anybody here who's unfamiliar with the term 5G? I'll briefly run that down just for anybody listening. 5G stands for the 5th generation of cellular technology. It is the latest and greatest, and it's going to here to save the day and make everything easier. Is what we're being promised by the telecom industry, including Sprint, AT&T, T-Mobile, and Verizon, of course. And it is a part of what they are calling the Internet of Things, which is basically the futuristic world where there's tens of thousands of sensors everywhere. So you don't only have your smartphone, you got driverless cars, you got sensors in the street that can sense traffic and change the street lights and all kinds of different things, many of which sound really wonderful, and if they could be done maybe in this way that doesn't cause us harm or cost us our privacy, sound like it could be a really beautiful thing. But it's also coming at a cost. So 5G is being pushed by the telecom industry out there. I know you guys are probably aware that in 2018, Sylvester Turner partnered with Verizon, and I just found out about this last year, and I started digging into it, and I realized, so the mayor meets with Verizon and says that he's going to remove all restrictions locally to make it easy for Verizon to roll out 5G. Then a couple months later, Verizon awards the mayor, well not Verizon, the CTIA, which is the Cellular Telephone Internet Association. It's basically the big wireless lobby. It's funded by Verizon and by the other companies. The CTIA gives the mayor the 5G Wireless Champion Award. We have a picture of him smiling and accepting this award, and the award was specifically given to him for removing all restrictions on 5G and making it easier. What that means is your neighborhood, your homeowners association, etc., has no say in where those small cell sites, which can be the size of a backpack or a refrigerator, they can also be installed on other existing poles, that your neighborhood has no say in where that goes, how much you can charge the company, whether or not you want to test it. That has been taken away not only by Sylvester Turner on the local level, but the FCC on the federal level. They passed an order last fall saying that localities and cities have no say in this. So this is the Trump administration and the telecom industry have kind of partnered together on that, and on the local level, Verizon and Sylvester Turner have partnered on it. So this means that the growing number of people like yourself who have concerns, thousands of scientists and health professionals, Micah and I ourselves have interviewed attorneys with the American Civil Liberties Union who've said that 5G could be a wolf in sheep's clothing that takes away all of our privacy because of its potential for surveillance. We've interviewed Dr. Martin Paul from Washington State University. We've interviewed the executive director of the Environmental Health Trust to talk about the health issues, from sleep loss to anxiety to bigger pictures and potentially cancer and tumors and things of that sort. There's also, again, the local control. So those are the ways I'm approaching this issue. If people are concerned about health, well, we can talk to them about that. If they're concerned about privacy, we can talk to them about that. If they're concerned about the local power being taken away, we can talk to them about that. I think no matter which way you slice it, there's reasons to question the system. So what I'm calling for is a moratorium on 5G. This has taken place in a few, like Brussels, Belgium recently did this. There's been huge protests in Switzerland. They're actually pushing back. I know Portland issued an order. I actually have templates that we could easily put together, like within a matter of minutes, copy the Portland initiative that they put together, change the language to fit Houston, and then boom, day one, moratorium on 5G. Everything Verizon's doing, stop, put a halt on that. Until two things happen. Until the city of Houston hosts open public forums where every Houstonian who has a concern is able to come have their voices heard, and the city council has to listen. Because if you've ever been to city council, this is a big part of the problem, is that they can put you at the very end, so 3 or 4 hours go by, and by the time you get up to speak, the mayor's gone, half the council's gone, the rest of them are on their phones, they're not even paying any attention. You talk your 2 minutes, ding, time's up, next. It's a very defeating feeling. So we would issue a moratorium on 5G. We would host public comment periods where anybody would be able to come up and express their concerns for or against 5G. What are your thoughts? Have a chance to express yourself, which is something that you don't really have in the city very often. That's what we're trying to change. And then order an independent health study. Now, I don't know what exactly the specifics of this would look like, because I don't want to say we're going to do an independent study and then we just get like somebody from the government who's partnered with Verizon to do it, right? Like a true independent study. And honestly, there are more than enough health professionals who are starting to speak up that I guarantee you, if Houston, the 4th largest city in the country, said they were doing a moratorium on 5G, we've had health experts here within a day or two ready to be involved in studying and helping us get accurate information on this. And then after that, let's say that's a 6-month period, let the people of Houston decide what they want. I don't want to come in and be a dictator. That's the thing, is even as this mayoral candidate in this position, I could just say, well, we're going to ban 5G. But again, back to what I was saying earlier, I think that you guys all own yourself and that you are capable of deciding what this city should take place, what should happen in here. So I don't want to come in and be the one that, with that ring of power and with the stroke of a pen, I'm going to get rid of 5G. No, what's more important is that you have the chance to speak your mind. You have an opportunity, and you didn't get that opportunity. When Sylvester Turner started meeting with Verizon last summer, when they started signing those contracts back in 2016, 2017, there was never a public comment period. There was never a health assessment on how is this going to affect the local wildlife, the people, the animals, the trees, because that's the thing, is down to the really basic level, they have to cut down a lot of trees as well just to install the infrastructure. So there's a number of different ways to approach this issue. If you have people who are concerned about privacy, if you have people who are concerned about eminent domain and local property rights, or concerned about their health, then invite them to look into the 5G issue. And we just released our first campaign ad this past Wednesday. It's a 2-minute video on 5G. It's really simple. It breaks down what I just said, and you can find further links on the website. I've done dozens and dozens of videos and reports on this now in the last year, so it's something that I don't want to say I'm an expert in, but I definitely can direct you to the experts because I've got to know them quite a bit. And is there any questions on 5G? Everybody basically understand why I'm trying to stand against it. And this is the other thing I want to mention, is I've got 9 different main issues that we're focusing on that have been brought to my attention, or things that I felt inclined to bring up. If one of these issues is not your issue, just listen to it. Hear why I'm concerned about it. And even if it's still not your issue, then that's fine. I know some of you might be, I've had parents reach out to me on the vaccine issue. I have people reach out to me on the 5G issue. I've got the cannabis crowd, excited because of my next point, which is decriminalizing cannabis completely in the city of Houston. And not only that, but making Houston a sanctuary city for cannabis. Imagine that.
The 5G, exactly how far these stations have to be either close together or far apart?
So the question was, with 5G, how far apart do the cell sites and the towers have to be? They have to be every 200 to 500 feet because they're using millimeter waves, so they're easily blocked. They don't travel well. So the mayor says that he wants to have driverless cars in the city of Houston. In order for something like that to work, you have to have sensors and towers like every couple hundred feet, not only because the signal's not very strong and easily blocked, but it has to be seamless. That's the thing about 5G, is that they're saying we're going to have download speeds 100 times faster, 1,000 times faster, depending on who you ask and whose numbers you're looking at. And that is because of it's known as low latency, which basically means it travels extremely fast. It's constantly pulsing back and forth, as opposed to maybe every couple seconds the phone. This one's going to be going extremely fast. So for that to work, you have to have towers or small cells installed every 200 to 500 feet. That's the major health concern. And again, this takes away your right to, what I believe, to self-ownership and to decide what you want in your body. Right now, there are already people who are concerned about EMFs in general, not just 5G, Wi-Fi, cell phones, and I think there are legitimate concerns there. But you have a choice. You cannot buy a smartphone. You cannot have Wi-Fi in your house. But when 5G comes, you have no choice. So even if you don't opt into Verizon's 5G program or whatever, as soon as you step outside of your house, it's going to be you're going to be in what some people have called swimming in a digital soup, right? Digital smog. Joe?
Yeah, what percentage is Houston 5G? Because I heard we were one of the 3 test cities, and then I heard Philadelphia was first, but my friend's phone says 5G. Right now,
so the question is, what percentage of Houston is 5G? As far as I know, there's 5 test neighborhoods that they're using right now. Acres Home is one of them.
Acres Home.
Yeah, Acres Home's one of the first neighborhoods that they put 5G in. Which, in that, just I'll answer your question, Joe. And the reason that is about the Acres Home is because, has anybody heard the term digital divide? Digital divide is basically this idea that the poorest among us and those in the rural areas are the last ones to get, broadband, to get Wi-Fi, to get 5G because it involves a lot more infrastructure, or the companies are only worried about putting the new technology in the rich neighborhoods and this and like that. So they're saying in order to prevent this digital divide where the poor get left behind, we're going to put 5G in the poor neighborhoods first. So Acres Home and 4 other neighborhoods are the first ones that have it now. Now, as far as the 5G on the phone, there were some lawsuits going on recently where Sprint has been falsely labeling their current system as 5G, or AT&T, I think they call it 5GE or something, which is just a marketing thing. None of them have 5G yet. What they're selling now is in-home 5G. But for true 5G internet things to exist, it's going to require the installation of all these towers. So they're starting out with the home residential style, but as far as blanketing the city, that's a process that's still beginning. And I actually, thanks to Kara, who is an activist that's been working with us on the 5G issue, if anybody's interested, just let me know after this. She sent me a list where you can find all the towers and all the antennas in the city. And I have the addresses. I have pictures of what they look like, and they tell you which one's for 5G, what's this for. So you can see. We've noticed more random black boxes and all kinds of things popping up. So if you're interested in that, we do have that information.
Where are the other 4?
I don't know them off the top of my head, but if we looked it up,
Because I'm seeing some weird boxes in Friendswood.
it could be. Is Friendswood in Houston city limits? Because if not, what I was going to say, the other smaller suburbs are probably signing their own agreements.
Parts of it's Houston, parts of it's Astoria County.
Okay. Yeah, I'll look
But
into
I'm
that.
seeing some weird new boxes that nobody's talking about on Mother's Couch.
I would suspect that most of the new infrastructure we're seeing roll out right now is going towards 5G. The goal is to have 5G all over the United States by 2020 and 2021. So they're working really fast. There's trillions of dollars invested into this.
Yeah, where is the money coming from for all these towers?
So the city and Verizon have so far refused to release any details on the cost of how much it's actually costing. So that's the thing, and this is happening not just in Houston, but all over the country. They're being very mum about the cost of this. And that's the thing, so Trump's executive order about a month ago, he said, these cities, these localities, they're greedy. They want to charge these telephone companies, outrageous prices. So we're going to issue a new executive order that says all new cell sites must be approved within 90 days. So that just happened. So they're literally working very hard to make it where we can't even decide what they want to. If we're like, okay, well, 5G, that's fine. Some people have some concerns, but let's get the city rich off of it. No, you can't even do. You can't even decide how much you want to charge them. The only thing you can really fight it on is aesthetics, and it's really horrible to say that, but you can basically complain. We don't like the way it looks. Can we make it look like a tree, or can we move it? And you'd have better chance of stopping it than you would if you come with the health concerns or the privacy concerns. Because under the FCC ruling of 1996, cities are not allowed to study wireless EMF for health reasons. You can study it for other reasons, but you're not allowed to do health studies. So 5G is one of the big things that we're going to focus on, and it's something that's the reason that has kind of become a big issue for me is, as you were saying, Joe, Houston was one of the first test cities. In October, I went to the press conference where the mayor and the CEO of Verizon announced the world's first 5G customer. And I was able to interview both the mayor and the CEO of Verizon and ask them, what do you think about health concerns? What do you think about privacy concerns? Both of them claimed they had no idea what I was talking about as they installed 5G into this young couple's house. And I went up to them and said, hey, I don't know if you've ever looked into this, but here's my card. Let me know if you want to know a little bit more about this system. Because they were just like, yeah, look, our whole house is wired off this one box now. I can stream 24 hours a day. I can download 4K, all these kinds of things, right? So it's a very important issue because white, black, brown, gay, queer, trans, whatever, you live in Houston, it's going to affect you. So that's why I think it's really important. It's going to affect you one way or the other. Even if you're not sure about the health concerns, look at the privacy concerns, look at the fact that we're losing local power. And I think that's setting a dangerous precedent. If a mayor, the CEO of the city, can sign a contract with some corporation with no say from the people who live in it and make all these things happen, what's to stop some other corporation coming in with some other technology, some other whatever, right? So 5G, moratorium on 5G, let the people have a say, get a health assessment done, and then vote on it. Another one is a real easy one, real simple, done in 10 minutes. Overturning the anti-food sharing ordinance, the food ordinance. Who knows about this? Yeah, if you don't know, it's City of Houston, it's illegal to share food with more than 5 people at a time if you don't have permission property owner. And this is seen by many, and I would say by me, as an attack on the homeless. And having been involved in a variety of forms of homeless advocacy, from raising money for Food Not Bombs, donating at Food Not Bombs, just helping out with, it started in the East End years ago. Micah and I were one of the first things we did as the Houston Freethinkers. They passed a law that said you can't stand, sit, or sleep in the same spot for more than like 5 minutes at a time. It was just super specific. It was an obvious attack on the homeless who were just like out there. And I'm not saying there aren't any issues, that there aren't criminals among the homeless, but not all homeless people are criminals, of course. And some people choose to be homeless. But it was the first sort of attack on the homeless. First, you can't stand or sit on this part of East Downtown for more than 5 minutes at a time. Then you can't share food with people. Then all homeless people have to have everything they own within a 3x3 container. And just one thing after the other. They want to develop that area. They want to keep bringing in light rails and all this stuff, and they don't like homeless people being there. Houston has a homeless problem. It's a real issue. I don't know if you guys have noticed, it's blowing up. I mean, there's more and more camps popping up, and it's because people are being pushed out of one area. I don't know that there's a perfect solution. I don't know what it is, but I want to know, and I want to work with you guys to try to figure that out. What I do know is that it's absolute garbage to tell people that they can't share food with other human beings. I mean, can we all agree on that, police? I mean, that's just... So, I mean, that to me is just a very easy, like I said, said and done. They passed this ordinance in 2012. It's on the books. Technically, they say, well, we're not enforcing it. But I know just last year we saw the HPD come. You guys might have seen this video too. It went around Facebook. HPD came out. Some people came and volunteered and gave a bunch of Christmas gifts and food to the homeless over off the 59 bridge over here. And then somebody showed video of HPD coming and making them throw it all away. Like literally throw away like brand new clothes and gifts and food and just dump it in the dumpster. Like what the heck is that? Why does the police even need to be wasting resources and time and energy on that? So all we need to do is just strike that from the books. I mean, it was fought by over 100,000 Houstonians signed petitions. 80, the biggest coalition probably in Houston's activism history. 80 different groups from Muslims, Christians, Catholics, all kinds of organizations came together and were against this. And we went to city council days and days and days, and Mayor Parker said no. And this mayor has just had no interest in overturning that. So even if they say they're not enforcing it, they still allow Food Not Bombs to feed downtown at the library. That should just be, strike from the charter completely. So there's no question about that. Anybody? Any questions on that one? Do you have something?
No, I was just gonna say, they like to pour bleach on food too, and that's just infuriating.
Pour bleach, dump food. I mean, and we work with a lot of different activists around the country too who have dealt with this. And I know, Joe, you were saying there was a recent court decision, right, related to?
Yeah, I was just trying to find. I couldn't find it, but there was a big decision in the high courts to make it legal again to feed the homeless. I'll find it.
Yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of legal basis for getting rid of it as well. So that's a really easy one in my mind. No, a third one that's really important to me, this is involved putting an end to no-knock raids here in Houston. And a no-knock raid is essentially the shorthand term for what is known as a no-knock warrant. This became a big topic recently here in the city. Who has heard about the Tuttle raid, the Tuttle shooting that happened a couple months ago? They're not the only ones, of course, by far, but it was a couple, Tuttle and what was it, Rhonda, something, I can't remember the wife's last name, but they were a couple, they were a common law couple. They lived off Harding Street here in Houston. The story goes that HPD talked to an informant that said that there were guns and heroin in this house and drugs were being dealt there. So they get a warrant and they say, well, since there's guns and drugs in there, we can't just go knock. We have to come in, raging, because this could be some violent people. So that's when they do no-knock warrants. So you don't get a, hello, it's Houston Police, we have some questions. You just get, boom, somebody beating your door down. And I think like any good Houstonian or probably anybody in Texas, like if somebody beats your door down out of nowhere, like they might get a gun in their face or something thrown at them, or I don't know, but that's not usually how my friends arrive at my house. So if somebody kind of started beating my door down, I probably would think about defending myself. So they beat the door down, and long story short, the couple's dead, their dog's dead. 4 HPD officers were shot, and immediately we're told, well, the couple started shooting whenever the cops came in. The dog lunged at us, so we had to shoot the dog right away, right? And then, over a matter of weeks, after the president of the police union threatens anybody who talks about cops and says, we're going to come find you on social media, which is just a whole other crazy thing. After a couple of weeks, we start to learn that, well, there never was an informant. That didn't even exist. The officer who claimed to have that informant, he lied about it. He lied to get the warrant, right? And then the family has since hired independent forensic investigators, and they just released a report last week saying that, well, the dog was actually shown 15 feet from the door, so the dog didn't lunge at the cops at all. He got killed after the fact, and that there's no evidence that the couple actually even fired back at the cops at all. So the whole thing is just a mess, and it's by far not the only incident at all. I mean, you can look at, I started to do some research on no-knock warrants and no-knock raids. They've already been ruled unconstitutional by at least one federal court. There are definitely studies showing like that it increases danger for both the people and the homes and the cops. So this is an anti-cop thing. You know, the cops are putting themselves in harm's way by just busting people's door down like that. And I understand there's going to be dangerous situations. Like, I mean, if you suspect somebody's like a real violent criminal and they have a house full of weapons. But the problem is that the process that they took this through was so shoddy apparently that the cop could just make something up and it got approved by a judge. And Art Acevedo, the chief of police, he said, well, we don't want to get rid of the no-knock warrants, but now what we're going to do, they have to go to another judge, and when they do it, they'll have SWAT teams with them. So they're going to put more cops and more SWAT, but he said they're going to have trained personnel. So I get what he's going for, but the thing about the mayoral position is that the mayor, when there's a mayor that comes in, they are able to select a police chief, and they are also able to help set policy. The mayor does have a say over what the police do. Now, he's not like running the cops, but he can influence the cops. So, as a mayoral candidate, and if in that position, I would absolutely call for an end of no-knock raids, and would not support any chief of police that would be unwilling to do that. Because I think that's just, again, it's putting the officers in danger, it's putting the people, the homeowners in danger, and there are other policing methods that could be used. And this, I think, gets into a whole bigger issue of not only police violence, but why did that raid take place in the first place? The suspicion of drugs. This is another failure of the drug war. This is another part of the failures of the drug war that they're going after. Oh, and by the way, they didn't find heroin there. There was no heroin found. There was some small amounts of weed and a metabolite of what might have been cocaine. So they might have been small-time users in their communities or in their own house, right? But they didn't find black tar heroin like they claim. They didn't, find this cache of weapons and things like that. So I think that it's also a symptom of the drug war itself. And I told you guys my personal experience getting locked up for drugs. This is an issue that I want to address. I want to help put an end to the drug war in Houston and help Houston become, like I said earlier, a sanctuary not only for cannabis, but a haven where people know that they feel safe. Because I'm not just going to sit here and say this is all the cops' fault, right? I have my issues with policing and a lot of elements of it, and the lack of training, and a whole host of things that we could have a conversation on. But it's not just. I have family members who were in HPD in the past. One of my aunts was in HPD. She actually left because the HPD sergeant she married was a violent man who beat her for years, while other HPD officers were silent. So I have experience in that area, but I'm not going to say it's, the cops are all bad or anything like that. But I do think that this is a part of a larger conversation about why does somebody who's going to get a hair artist or a makeup artist take longer time to get their license than the cops have training? Why do the cops have 6 months of training and then they get sent to the street? And why do we have this federal 1033 program where military weapons from the war on terror are being made down here? We're going to talk about surveillance. Those are all coming from that militarization of the police. This is, I think, kind of a bigger issue, but it's something that could be talked about on the local level. These are not conversations that they're going to have. Instead, you have Tony Busby, for example. You'll hear him talk about what does he want to do with the cops. He wants more cops. He wants to institute the broken windows theory of the police. If you look into this, it's what led to stop and frisk in New York. It's led to racial profiling. The people who came up with this theory themselves actually disavowed and said the departments are not using it the way we described it. Their thinking was that if you stop low-level criminals, like drug dealers or people spray painting, well, that'll prevent bigger crimes. But there's no studies that back that up. But what it has led to is predictive policing, going after people, again, who are low-level, non-violent offenders, and locking them up. And it's led to more racial profiling. It's led to more profiling of all kinds of people. We just look up the broken windows theory policing. That's what Tony Busby is calling for. I'm calling for something, I would say, a lot less invasive in your lives. All right, so as part of the drug war that we were just talking about, cannabis. Let's get to the cannabis, the good stuff. Everybody likes to talk about cannabis. Even if you don't smoke weed, I think you've probably seen the benefits that it's brought to other cities who have decriminalized or legalized or taken that route, like the economic benefit and how we can approach that. So again, the underlying principle that this whole campaign is based on is self-ownership, that I believe you own yourself and you have the right to decide how to medicate yourself. what to put in your body, who you date, what you eat, all those kinds of things. I don't think it's the role of the government, local, state, or federal, to be telling you how you should do that. So love who you love, eat what you want, as long as you're causing no harm to other people. That's how I feel. And that's why I support complete decriminalization of cannabis. We've already seen in 2 years that the district attorney here, Kim Ogg, has done a small deference campaign where people who are caught with like 2 ounces or less of weed, first-time offenders, would get a ticket instead of being locked up. And now they recently extended it to where people like me who actually have felonies, it can apply to them. They've kind of grown the categories. And 2 years of this program, it saved the city $35 million.
Wow.
$35 million for people who don't have to go to jail, don't have to go sit in that time that your tax dollars are paying for, have to go through that whole court system, probably lose their job. Then you got somebody else in society that's probably got to get unemployment or struggle. It just creates all of these external factors that aren't always seen. It's just like, well, somebody got locked up, and someone will say, well, it's the law, Derrick. You shouldn't break the law if that's what the law is. Well, I think that we all understand that throughout history there are times when good people have to disobey unjust laws, and I really can't see how locking people in a cage for ingesting a plant or putting something in their body, that's I don't get that. That doesn't I can't comprehend that. So as a mayor, I could come in even further, as I said, with having influence on the police and say, look, I'm not going to support or hire a police chief, or again, just get this in the conversation, unless that police chief would say we are no longer going to spend any energy on locking people up for cannabis. So not only the district attorney, thank you, not only the district attorney, but the police themselves. So I will say that Chief Art Acevedo has supported this. The mayor kind of begrudgingly supported it, but I think that they're afraid to go even further, because if you say, look, the district attorney won't accept charges, the HPD chief says, don't waste our time anymore going after cannabis user, and the mayor says, we won't even spend any energy going after that. In fact, if you have a cannabis business, bring it to Houston. We want to become a sanctuary city for cannabis, where people can start getting the medicine they need, or using it recreationally, or how they choose, and yeah, bring that in here. Now, I also understand there are folks who might hear that like, whoa, this is going to turn us into a drug city. This is going to lead to a bunch of college kids walking around, baked or crashing their cars after eating too many brownies or something like that. Like there's always going to be horror stories and fears.
We know better.
There's always, but we also have examples of decriminalization. I think probably the greatest example on a country level is Portugal. Portugal decriminalized cannabis 17, 18, maybe almost 20 years ago, 15 years ago at least. I think 2005 when they started. And they went way further. They decriminalized all drugs. And they've seen drops in addiction rates. They've seen drops in HIV. They started treating people actually as patients, because as I shared with you guys earlier, when I was addicted to crystal meth, it wasn't because I liked crystal meth. It was because I was messed up inside. And I had things going on that I didn't know how to deal with. For some reason, these drugs were sort of an escape or a way for me to just get away from my issues. But once I was able to get out of that and look back, I could see very clearly, wow, like, okay, this is what I was struggling with, and I was using that to self-medicate. That doesn't mean everybody who uses drugs is self-medicating, but I do know that I've met hundreds of people over the years who've come to me and said that that's a struggle they're still dealing with. Even if they don't touch drugs, maybe you're a gambler, maybe you're an overeater, maybe whatever you got, but we all have different ways that we process our trauma. So if we start criminalizing people who have trauma and throwing them in cages because they're using a plant or they're seeking help, then you're turning them into criminals. I had to spend 4 years of my life going to weekly probation meetings, drug testing, getting treated one way, getting turned down from jobs, getting turned down. Even 15 years later, I still get turned down for apartments or for jobs because people who judge me in that way, like, it doesn't really affect my life too much anymore. But there are still folks out there who hear that, felon, drug charge, there's still a stigma to that. And that ruins people's lives. People who have caused no harm to anybody else other than, I definitely caused my family some stress and I caused myself some time in my life. But as I said, I really needed help. I didn't need to be locked in a cage. So we don't want to lock people in cages. We want to help people. Stop treating people like criminals. Treat people who need help like patients that need support, like community members who need support. Encourage businesses that can help bring some economic support to the city. Stop wasting taxpayer money. If that can happen in 2 years with just this small program, what happens if the entire city of Houston decriminalizes and stops wasting resources? How quickly can you pay the firefighters after that? How quickly can the firefighters get paid after that, right? Obviously, that's a big issue. And that's another thing, is a lot of the things I'm talking about, if we get rid of the 5G thing, if we stop wasting money on known operators and wasting money on locking people with cannabis, all of a sudden you end up with a lot more resources that could probably pay the firefighters, and like that's a whole other issue. But I think generally people probably want firefighters. Maybe some people probably want firefighters more than they want cops, and maybe some way the other way. But at the end of the day, we need them there. And if you're looking for resources, the mayor hasn't put forth any plan. He's basically I asked him straight to his face, is there any programs you can cut? Is there anything you can do to pay the firefighters and not lay them off? And he said, we're scraping the bucket. We've tried everything, I just laid out 3 ideas that I've never heard the mayor say that I'm sure we could save hundreds of millions of dollars by doing just those couple ideas. So yeah, that's where I'm at with cannabis. Any questions on that? I think we all get that one. Now, another one that's really important to me, this is I think more on I think they're all positive, but this is more about building community, which is absolutely an important part of this, is promoting localization and decentralization in Houston's food production system. That was a lot of words. What does that mean? It means that right now all of us are dependent on Kroger, H-E-B, Walmart, Fiesta, what have you, for our groceries. Maybe some of us put in a couple of hours in the community garden. We got a front yard garden, a backyard garden, or a windowsill garden. But for the most part, we are dependent on the food that's coming from California, coming from Mexico. It's being shipped and driven from thousands of miles away with all these different environmental impacts. It's also a very weak point. How many people here lived through Harvey or a previous hurricane? Like most of us, right? So what happens when we get the notice that, oh no, the hurricane's definitely coming? Grocery stores start emptying out within minutes, right? Like the gas stations start running out. And you might be in a pretty difficult situation of like, crap, we're gonna be out of food. I gotta go out there and try to fight for what I can, keep my family some food. What would happen if we were in that position where we have hundreds of community gardens and urban farms and food forests in Houston? We've seen this take place in Seattle and other places where they embrace it. The city essentially gets out of the way and lets those who are interested cultivate this. And if you've ever spent any time in any community gardens, I know some of you guys I've been in gardens with you, been in the soil with you. There's something special there. You bring some food, you bring some music, and you get in the garden, and you've got community. And that really, it builds bonds, and I think it's something that more people should experience. So if I was elected, one of the easiest things I think you could do is to identify all the city-owned lots, the vacant lots that are just piling up with trash, or they're just sitting there not being used. Maybe the city's waiting for somebody with a lot of money to come buy them. And say, look, you've got 3 vacant lots in your neighborhood. We're stepping out of the way. If you guys choose to develop this, turn it into a community garden, turn it into an urban farm, we won't get in the way. We won't, if there's even resources, maybe we'll help, we'll support, right? But at the very least, let people know that you will not be penalized for coming to build community gardens and trying to create community in your space. I guarantee you there is lots of room around the city, and maybe there might even be business owners or landowners, property owners who are like, you know what, I want to be a part of that. Here, I'll donate my land so that you guys can have a garden built in this neighborhood. And it would be completely up to you as individual communities to decide what to do. I'm not saying I'm going to take your taxpayer dollars and we're going to use it to fund these gardens. No, I'm saying if you have the interest, if you have the drive, that's the whole thing about this campaign, is I can't do it on my own. I need you guys to have the initiative and the drive to want to do something. And whether or not we were to get elected, the whole idea is to put energy into these ideas. And we don't have to wait till November for this idea to take off. We could start building community gardens today. We could start supporting community farms. And through that, the folks who live in 5th Ward, which is where I live right now, who only have 2 or 3 corner stores, a Fiesta that has a very, very minimal amount of organic food, or take the bus to the further Kroger away and get you a little bit. Well, maybe there's 3 or 4 community gardens in that neighborhood now. And I've seen it happen at Last Organic Outpost, which was right there in 5th Ward. And when Last Organic Outpost was around, we had people from that neighborhood who had no option for organic food coming there, picking fresh greens for their families, learning about the food, getting involved. It's a beautiful thing. We need that in Houston. How can we be this 4th largest city in the country and people are eating like crap? We're also sometimes known as the fattest city in the country. You guys heard of that before? Yeah, it's probably a part of this problem now. And even, this idea could be taken as far as we want it to. Encouraging community gardens, more community gardens at schools. Maybe then the schools stop relying on Airmark so much and the kids start actually eating organic, healthy food. Why should we be feeding the kids the crappiest, worst food out there when they're trying to shape their mind and get them strong? So there's a lot of different ways that this could be embraced, but that's absolutely important to me because I've spent time in the soil, because I've spent time out there in the sun working the garden. My grandmother has a farm in Kentucky. She's shown me a lot over the years, and I see the power in that, both in building community and, again, as I said, unplugging us from those centralized food production systems. Where I'm not saying everybody's got to spend all day out in the garden, but wouldn't you like the experience of knowing that you got a community garden in your backyard, you and your family, you can take the kids, you can take some friends, and go spend a couple of hours out there and learning about new foods and taking them home and cooking it together. And I'll tell you, there's something special about putting a seed in the ground, tending to it over months and months, watching it fruit, watching it harvest. It's like raising a little kid in a way, right? And watching them grow, and then, well, you eat them at the end, so it's a little different. It's a little different, but there's similarities. All right, so community gardens, urban farms, food forests. You guys down for that? Who here would like to see more community farms, urban gardens in the city, right? I think that's an idea we can all embrace. Another important one for me is the surveillance issue that I kind of touched on earlier. This is, again, another area where I'm not saying let's ban all Houston Police Department surveillance. I don't want to be the king that does that, the one in the crown who's deciding for 4 million people. I want Houston to decide, is this what we want? So day one, order an assessment of all surveillance equipment that the Houston Police Department has. I personally know of at least 3 different kinds. Some of you know that I've helped expose Stingray surveillance and cell phone surveillance, that it's a tool that HPD has along with many other officers. And I spent the last few years investigating that because I found that myself and Micah and the other Houston freethinkers, our activist community, that we were put under surveillance by the Houston Police Department. Back in 2012, we were leaked an image from a police officer showing them hosting training sessions with the name the Houston Freethinkers and a picture of us on the screen. And this was leaked directly from an officer. And that began my investigation into surveillance in 2012. And I realized that the Houston Police Department, along with many other departments, is using a tool called the Stingray. And again, this is an example of something that started out in Iraq and then made its way back to the United States. Now local police departments have it. And what the Stingray basically is, it's a little box, kind of like a suitcase or a laptop. And say that Joe's wanted for a crime, and they know that Joe might be over here in Montrose. They don't know exactly where, but they got his phone number. So they're going around driving and just pinging his phone, because your phone's constantly sending out a signal, trying to connect to the tower. So they're driving around, they're trying to connect to him and trick his phone to think that it's connecting to a tower so they can gather information. Your phone calls, the amount of time, pictures and images now, the newer ones. But this device doesn't work specific to Joe's phone. It can gather information from anybody else who's in the path of this device as they travel. So they're literally going around scooping up all kinds of data. They claim they don't hold it for long, but we actually don't know, because the company that produces this is the Harris Corporation. The Harris Corporation makes all police departments and the FBI sign non-disclosure agreements saying that they will not reveal how this works. This has even been tested in court, where officers caught drug dealers using Stingrays, and whenever they were put on the stand and asked to detail how it worked, they decided to drop the charges rather than reveal how it works, because they're bound by this non-disclosure agreement. So you literally have a police department, which is supposed to be funded by the taxpayers and serving the people of Houston, signing the contract through the city of Houston with the corporation, and then saying, we can't tell you guys how we're using this tool that we used your money to buy. That's what's happening with the Stingrays. HPD also has aerial surveillance planes that fly over, that have tracked the planes. We don't know exactly what they're doing. Maybe they're saving us from terrorism. That's what we always hear, right?
Yeah.
We also know that HPD is interested in facial recognition technology. We also know that despite Houston in 2010 voting against and getting rid of the red light cameras, since that time, we have thousands and thousands of cameras that have been installed all around the downtown area and increasingly around Houston that came from a Department of Homeland Security grant, came from the federal government. Now, I am definitely not of the school of thought that says, well, if you're doing nothing wrong, then there's nothing to hide. I would not be the one to say that. In fact, I think that you have every reason to hide everything you want, because that's your right as a free person. You choose what you want to put on social media, you choose what you want to say to people in public, but you should know that you are free in your own devices. And the way the world works, this little thing contains your life on it now. Most of us have bank information, all kinds of things, very sensitive personal information. So for the cops to be able to just scoop that data from you, or to scan your face without your permission, which is happening. Houston is, again, a test city for that. It's called a face print. Houston is one of the first airports where they're rolling out facial recognition technology in the airport, and they're increasingly putting it in different places around the city. So my point is, there's a number of different technologies that are being used, funded by you guys, funded by all the taxpayers of Houston, and you never had a say in it. And you probably never even heard about it. You probably didn't even know they were discussing it, because every Tuesday and every Wednesday downtown in that building, there are 16 people in the mayor who meet and who sign contracts with new companies that are doing all kinds of stuff that most of us will never know about, but they're using your money to do it. And that's a big part of the problem. There's no communication from City Hall and the mayor and the people, because they don't want you to be involved. They want you to not care about the mayor's race. So they're going to talk about potholes. They're going to talk about whatever they can to make this as boring as possible. Look, here, we can fix the potholes right now. Here, the mayor and the city hall will get out of the way, fix your own potholes. Nobody's going to come arrest you. Nobody's going to come bother you. We'll have the pothole brigade, and we'll start fixing our own potholes. We don't have to worry about that. Problem solved. Let's not spend the rest of the election talking about it. There are bigger issues that affect everyone, because, again, white, black, brown, trans, queer, straight, whatever, surveillance affects you. 5G affects you. Whether or not your family members get locked up for a plan affects you. No-knock raids, you could be the victim of a no-knock raid one day. You never know, because apparently it happens based on lies. It's just that easy. So surveillance, I want to put that up for the people of Houston to decide what they have to say on that. Now, another big important one to me is standing in defense of free speech and civil liberties. And this is kind of maybe a broad one, but I think it's an important one. On the civil liberties aspect, I think mostly everything I've talked about helps you understand that I believe you own yourself, and I don't think that the government has the right to come tell you what to do, or corporations or anybody, me, anybody, right? So as a mayoral candidate, I want to stand in defense of you, and defense of my rights and your rights, and whatever that means. I think that whether you're looking at federal, state, or local, there are many, many efforts to get in the way of our abilities to live free and the ways that we desire. There are efforts to spy on us. There are efforts to get into our affairs, to tell us how to live our lives. I would always, as a mayoral candidate and in this position, stand against any efforts to do that. And also on the free speech angle, I think that we're really in a time where, because of presidential politics or just media propaganda, whatever you want to chalk it up to, there's so much, or there's at least the appearance of so much division in this country. People don't even want to post their opinions publicly anymore. It used to be that social media was the way to express yourself and to get your ideas out there. Now some people are afraid to even say what they really feel out loud because they might be, treated one way or the other. Instead of having a dialogue, somebody might throw a milkshake at them. Somebody might, whatever. And I'm not saying there aren't a lot of messed up people out there. I try to confront them and put cameras in their faces when I can. But I think that a big problem is that we're getting away from dialogue. We're getting to a very dangerous point where we can't even talk. We can't have a conversation about controversial things. Instead, it's ban this, get rid of this, take this. As a journalist, I've faced censorship through the social media companies. The websites and the different people I've written for have been labeled as Russian propaganda. We've been removed from YouTube, removed from Facebook. So there's all these different, bigger picture things going on. And I think on the local level, we need to make sure that there's somebody in there that says, I will stand against any effort to curb free speech in the city of Houston. In 2014, I don't know if they didn't arrest me, they temporarily detained me, and they gave me a ticket for a law that I didn't even know existed in the city. Long story short, I went to city council. I was there to talk about an issue, like one of the many times I have. HPD officer starts coming and pulling on my shirt, telling me he needs me outside. I'm like, dude, who are you? What's going on? He brings me outside and starts accusing me of cussing out one of the council members. So I sit down, like, I'm not getting dragged anyway. I just sat on my butt, and then, turned into a scene. He starts dragging me, and anyways, within 10 minutes, somebody from the back comes up and says, oh, there was a mistake, it's not him, it wasn't him. And so the officer, after harassing me and throwing me on the ground and handcuffing me and, my friends filming this whole thing, he's just like, oh, okay, he just lets me go. I was a little bit upset, and I said, you owe me an effing apology. And then he lit up right after that and said, what did you say? And immediately grabbed me. We're in City Hall. I'm getting ready to go to the elevator. I'm like, you owe me a freaking apology. And there's a lady right there who had nothing to do with it, just minding her own business. The officer grabs me, handcuffs me, and asks the lady, did you hear what he said? And she just like, oh, I'm not trying to get into this. And he's like, were you offended by that? Because there's a law in the city of Houston that if you use, it's known as abusive language. If you use abusive language and somebody there says, I was a witness to that and I'm offended by it, you can be arrested.
What?
That's literally, it's an ordinance that passed in the city of Houston. I don't know how old it is, but that was the justification they gave to holding me, because this officer was upset that he missed with me. He came and interfered with me. I didn't even get to speak at city council, dragged me out the hallway, and then once he realized that he makes a mistake and I'm a little upset, I'm like, dude, you owe me an apology. Okay, I cussed, my bad, sorry, we're all adults here, dude. You just dragged me on the ground, made me look like a fool at city council, you owe me an apology. He didn't like that, so he used the first thing you can think of, abusive language. And that was my first experience with that. I think that as silly as that might seem, and it might not be an everyday situation we're going to face, but imagine that being used against you in all kinds of different ways. If we get to a point where people just say, well, I'm offended, they just use some abusive language. Next thing you're getting a ticket. It could just, it's a silly little thing, but my point with saying this is that I just want to make it clear that I would always stand in defense of free speech and civil liberties in the city of Houston. And to be consistent with that, that means that I am absolutely against any order for mandatory vaccinations in the city of Houston. Now, this is obviously a controversial topic for a number of issues. If you look at the mayor page on DerrickBroze.com, it goes into detail about these issues. I don't say a word about the science because I'm not a scientist and I'm not here to discuss the science. The angle that I've been focusing on, every week Micah and I are on the radio, we're looking at the news, we're looking at just different reports of what's going on in other cities. Some of you are probably very aware that in the city of New York, that the mayor, Bill de Blasio, he issued a mandatory vaccination order which gave parents 48 hours to comply in 2 different areas, or I think 4 or 5 different areas of Brooklyn, specifically this Orthodox Jewish community. 48 hours or they face $1,000 fine. And then they said, well, we're going to fine them another $1,000 after this, right? So who knows how many, some of these parents are still not complying, you know, and then what happens is, well, okay, well now we're going to shut down this school because there's not enough kids that are vaccinated, so now the kids can't go to school, right? So it's obviously created pushback. There was a rally last weekend in the Orthodox Jewish community in Brooklyn. They had a lot of supporters, and they were basically saying, like, this is, you know, they have religious reasons, they say. Some people have personal reasons. Some people have, whatever, philosophical reasons. Whatever it may be. I don't care. It's not my business.
My body.
It's your business how you medicate yourself. So if you want to medicate with cannabis, you want to medicate with Tylenol, you want to go to the doctor and go to Big Pharma, you want to go get a vaccination, you don't want to get a vaccination. That's not my business as far as I'm concerned. I would absolutely stand against any effort to issue, support any laws, ordinances, etc. for mandatory vaccinations in the city of Houston, as well as attempts to remove personal philosophical exemptions. Because as far as I'm concerned, they're all personal, right? I mean, if it's your religion, that's your religion. If it's your philosophy, that's your philosophy. If it's your medical, that's personal to you. It's not my business. Now and I also want to encourage, again, back to the free speech thing, is I want to encourage open dialogue in this conversation. Because I'm sure taking this position is going to get labeled me an anti-vaxxer, and I'm fine with that. Because for one, the term has no meaning. It's silly to me. It's like that term, you can put under that term parents who have questions, people who are like, yeah, the vaccines are going to kill us, it's a depopulation agenda, and everybody in between. Though we're all anti-vaxxers. Anybody with a question, anybody with just like, hey, can I see some more research? Can I see some more science? Or hey, why is this happening? Or even taking this position, not taking a position on the science, just saying, I don't think it's right to force people to, because where's that going? I'm going to fine you $1,000 today. I'm going to fine you $1,000 tomorrow. Eventually, they're going to want to come collect this $1,000. And maybe they're going to pull a no-knock raid on you or they're going to send CPS to take your kids away. I mean, where do you think this goes? To me, I'm not trying to be extreme, but I feel like that's the logical conclusion of these steps. You don't just say, I'm going to fine somebody because you never plan to collect it, right? And who are they going to send? They're going to send like a health worker, like, hey, we're here to collect that $2,000. And what happens if the parent says, no, like, I'm not paying you, I don't owe you anything. Then they're going to come back with men's and guns, or they're going to come back with SWAT. I don't know, but we don't want to even go in that direction, right? That's not the direction the city of Houston is going. And the reason I'm making that an issue is not only because I've seen a mayor do that in New York, and I've seen other states and cities that are in Washington State, California, they're trying to remove exemptions. Texas is seen as like a hub. They call it a hub for anti-vaxxers or for families who don't vaccinate or who question vaccinations. And even more so, Houston. There's a Dr. Peter Hotez. He recently appeared on the Joe Rogan podcast. He's a doctor here at Baylor College of Medicine. And I went to me and Miriam went to one of his events, and I asked him a couple questions. We're trying to get him on the radio. He's a huge proponent for vaccines, and in fact, he is one of the biggest proponents, saying that he thinks all exemptions should be removed in the city and in Texas. So there are efforts to make this happen right now. This is not just me talking about something that could happen one day. I believe we will come to a time when there is an attempt to issue this in Houston, because they're saying it's a hub for unvaccinated people and this kind of things. And I just think that's a precedent I don't want to be setting or be involved in, because if you say yes, they can come force vaccinate you for one thing, well then the next time there's an epidemic for this, or the next time, where else does that go? It goes a lot of places that I don't think we want to be in. So we could create, and Houston be a place where people know that their health freedom is going to be respected, their bodily autonomy is going to be respected, whether that has to do with cannabis, whether it has to do with wanting to get away from 5G or from the vaccinations or what have you, again. And I want to have that conversation. So when they start calling me an anti-vaxxer and saying I'm trying to ban vaccines or whatever, you guys know what I'm actually calling for. You know what I'm actually talking about. Because I expect that to happen. I expect they're either going to ignore me completely or call me some crazy conspiracy theorist, drug addicts, felon, whatever. But I've told you guys all about who I am today. I've told you about these ideas. I'm putting it out there because I want you guys to understand what I'm committed to doing. I'm spending the next 5.5 months doing this. Like I said, I don't know that I can win, and I'm kind of terrified at the prospect, to be quite honest. I'm going to be honest with you guys. But I know that I'm committed for the next 5.5 months to spend my energy, my name, my body, my words, to spread these ideas for you, and to spread any other ideas that you care about that I think we can come to terms on, we can find a solution, because I want to be solutions-based, right? I'm not just going to talk about things without there to be a solution. There's always something we can do about it locally. And honestly, that's what our activism has always been about. Whether it's through the Houston Freethinkers or the radio, we're going to talk about issues, but what can we tell you to do about it? Even if that means we just got to go tell other people, because that's all we can do right now. The final issue that I want to raise, and then I'll take any questions, and I'll tell you guys sort of my agenda moving forward and how you can really help me, whether you live in Houston city limits or not. The final issue that I want to do is to take away the power of the mayor and give it to city council, and ideally through that, give it back to the people of Houston. Now, as I mentioned, I've been to city council over the years for water fluoridation, police violence, homelessness, 5G, I mean, a whole range of things, surveillance, all kinds of things. And when I go there, I might have support from a couple city council members who tell me privately, like, yes, we're with you on this, you know, we support you. They'll give me a nice comment after I speak and extend my time a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's like, thank you, next, you know, and nothing gets done. And I've been told by council members that the reason this is because Houston's mayoral position is basically a dictatorship. Now, when you look on local politics, there's usually what they call a strong mayor or a weak mayor position. Houston has a strong mayor position, but even more than the other cities that also have this particular one is extremely strong. So one sort of byproduct of this is that if you come to the city of Houston, you have a concern, you get all the people in your neighborhood to call the people in your district, and you're letting them know, and they're getting your phone calls and their emails, and they're upset, and they raise it to the mayor, hey mayor, I gotta let you know my constituents are concerned about cannabis, they're concerned about 5G, whatever. If the mayor says no, it can't be placed on the agenda, which means it can't be debated, it can't be discussed. You'll be put at the end of the line. That's why I always get put at the end, because the issues I'm talking about aren't part of the official agenda. So the only way you could get them to actually listen is if your issue is on the official agenda, they are sort of, by the laws of the charter, forced to actually listen to you, and there can be more of a hearing, and then a council member can introduce a vote on it. But as it stands now, the mayor has the final say-so. So, for example, when Mayor Parker was in office, some of the council members were trying to change this, and they're like, all we have to do is to change the city charter to take away some of the mayor's power and make it more, you know, distributed to the city council, and then through that to the people. But that has to go through the mayor too. So in order for that change to happen, you would need a mayoral candidate to say, I'm willing to give away my own power. I am that candidate that wants to give away the mayor's power. I don't think the mayor should be this strong. Why should one single person, let alone 16 people, control what happens with 3.5 million people in this city? 3.5 million people, taxpayers, 1 million registered voters. And again, I don't think voting is the only way to express yourself, voting in politics, because the reality is this: we vote every single day of our lives. Each and every one of us are voting all the time with the actions we choose, the relationships we choose to have, the way that we communicate with people, the way we work together, the way we shop, the things that we support with our time, energy, and our money and our resources. So we're voting every single day. So I want you to remember that don't wait till November to vote. Start thinking about these ideas and how can you get your community thinking about them in the now instead of later. But when it comes down to voting in electoral politics on the city level, the mayor has the control over that. He can, you know, all these issues right here. That's why we could go there every single day. I guarantee you we could send 100+ people in there and they would just ignore us if it doesn't line their pockets or if it doesn't fit their agenda. So if I was to come into office, I would issue the moratorium. I would do all these things I discussed. And once we got these balls rolling and all the lawsuits started getting set off, because you better believe there's going to be some lawsuits if we try to stop for 5G and we try to get rid of HP surveillance, there probably would be some lawsuits, which would be fun part of the journey too. That's the thing, is there's nobody willing to stand up to them. There's nobody willing to say, like, federal government, no, we're going to do what we want to do in Houston. Forget your laws. And corporations, Verizon, no, we're going to do what we want to do here. So there would be some resistance and pushback, and you better believe that there's going to be pushback to me getting anywhere close to that. But after those processes start, we would change the city charter. Now, I don't know what the details would be. Maybe something like, if 1/3 of city council members bring an issue to the table, it's automatically placed on the agenda. You know, I mean, that seems fair to me. It's like, okay, well, that means, because the idea would be that you now know that your council members would ideally be more receptive to you, because now they know they actually have some power, as opposed to where it is now. You come talk to them like, yeah, man, I'm with you, but like I can't do anything about it. So they won't even say anything. Like, why bother? They don't even put any energy into it because they know the mayor stands against them. They're just going to be wasting their time. So then they try to go piecemeal and get like whatever little bit they can. But meanwhile, everything is being, you know, your rights are being taken away. There are people trying to invade your life, trying to tell you what you can put in your body and, you know, how you can medicate yourself. I want to be able to change all these issues. At the very least, spend the next 5.5 months raising awareness on this, getting on as many radio programs, any podcasts, any YouTube channels, anything. I'm willing to talk to people. If you guys know people who are content creators in the city who are trying to talk about this race, I've had more than a few people reach out to me, so we'll be getting some press over the next few months, and I'm going to use everything I can to really get this message out there. But I need your support in order for me to even get these conversations started. Because as I said, the mayor supports 5G. Bill King against decriminalization. They're either against or silent on every single issue that I've mentioned to you today. So they're none of these issues. Go look at their websites. I encourage you to look at the issues they talk about. See if they appeal to you. They might appeal to you more than the things I've talked about. But I'm trying to talk about issues that are not only bigger than me as an individual, but are bigger than the city of Houston. But at the same time, give us an opportunity as a city to make Houston a place that people want to be. Because they know that they can come here and they're not going to be locked in cages for cannabis. That they can come here and they can feel safe with their families. That their kids aren't going to be taken away because they're not raising them the way that the state says, or that their free speech and civil liberties aren't going to be intruded on. There's going to be urban farms and food forests. I mean, it sounds like a whole different city to me, and I think it's one that's at least worth fighting to get that vision out there. So that's what I'm trying to do, guys. I need your help. I'm going to take some questions. I just want to outline a few things that have popped in my head. As I said, we have about 5.5 months till things really get going. I won't be in those debates till September, October, when that rolls around. But, some of you know that I often travel a bit. I'm going to be here all summer, though. I'm planning, I got maybe 1 or 2 short trips here in Houston, but I'm going to be spending the next 5 months putting my energy into this. And, doing all the work that I already do, but committing myself to putting time into this every week, to trying to. Every Wednesday, you'll see a new video about a different issue. This past week, it was 5G. If you haven't seen that video yet, check it out. It's 2 minutes, really easy to share. We're going to try to keep them under 1 minute, 2 minutes. This week, it'll be cannabis. Every Wednesday, it's going to be a new video on one of the issues until we get all 9 issues, and we're just going to keep talking about different ideas. Every Friday, I'm doing a Townhall live stream via Facebook at noon. So check that out, share with friends, and I'm going to be doing that every week, starting to reach out to student groups. Anybody who's involved, has kids, or is involved in any college that's in the city limits, please get connected with me. I'm trying to get connected to different student groups that might be willing to host me so I can come to an event once school starts up again in the fall. Because that's another thing, is that the youth, and I say that term broadly, I'm 34 years old, I mean from myself and people older than me and younger, are being completely ignored. If you don't got money, if you're not part of the establishment class, your issue is probably not being talked about in this race. But you better believe that none of the other candidates are at the colleges. They're not putting any energy to try to communicate with them. And if you look at what happens on the presidential elections, the youth, the college kids do care about what's going on in the world. When people go there, they show up. They want to hear what's going on, but they're completely ignored on the local level. And that's where they can have the most impact. Instead, they're being, they have all these candidates coming up in front of them and promising them that, like, elect me as president and I'll save the day and fix everything. And meanwhile, they ignore everything that's going on locally. And I think it's because nobody's putting in any energy to reaching out to them. So that's going to be a big part of my focus. I need help on that. We do have some people helping out already. I do want to say as well, we absolutely need volunteers. Miriam is going to be, we got a sign-up sheet over there. If you haven't got to sign up, we have emails. I'm going to be sending out weekly emails. I also have a text list. If anybody wants to join that, it's through an app called Remind, and basically I'll just send you guys out text updates directly. If you're interested in volunteering, we could absolutely use that. And you're not going to hear me ask for money a lot throughout this campaign, because I want to believe that winning on ideas and spreading a message is based on more than just money. But the reality is, too, that money can help as well. Like, we need yard signs. Like, today we don't have anything to give you guys. I would love to have given you guys all something to take home, shirts and whatever it may be. But one of the first things I want to do is be able to get yard signs. This business, the reason we're here right now is because I've worked with these guys for 7-8 years now. We've held all kinds of events here. He's going to let us line up the whole sidewalk with Derrick Broze for mayor signs, all right outside of here. So we got to get those. We got to get some funds raised and get that, and we'll get signs, get stickers. I want to also try to keep it as environmentally friendly as possible too. So I don't want to just, like, it would make me sad to see a bunch of Derrick Broze for mayor litter all over the place. Like, so I'm open to ideas on how can we make it a campaign that is taking on, like, I like to think holistically. How can we take all of these things into consideration, spread ideas, do it in a good way, but stay in line with what we believe, right? Chris?
Yeah, because I know you and I know how you think, and you don't like vertical, you like horizontal. Do you have a campaign manager, or is there going to be any kind of,
Micah is my campaign advisor.
Who's Micah?
Micah's right there. That's my buddy right there.
Micah.
Micah's my main idea helper with. things like that. Miriam is the campaign treasurer. Give it up to Miriam. And the reason, that's just kind of like a formality, like we have to have a campaign treasurer. In order for me to be officially in it, we have to file paperwork with somebody's campaign treasurer. And so, yeah, but I'm also open
That's
to like
normal. The woman
advisors.
always controls the money.
Yep.
She's definitely better at it than I am.
Is it Bitcoin or what?
We are open to taking crypto. Like, so just on the whole legal thing, like, you know, this is all like I said, I'm diving into. This is totally grassroots. I've been doing all the research. Mike has been helping out. We've had Miriam and a few other people help me out. And we do have people who are totally outside of Houston who are like, we're going to make this happen. We're going to help you however we can. But I've had to do most of the research, and you know, so coming up at the end of June, we have to file our first campaign, you know, filing. So any donations we make between now and then, we got to file a form. And this is to keep myself from like this whole mayoral thing ended up with me getting in legal trouble for not filing paperwork right or something, because it's all new to me. But so we got to file in late June, and we file again at the end of the year, and then it'll be over with. But if you are interested in doing donations, we have something set up on the website. All we need is like your occupation, employer name, again, legal stuff, not me wanting to get into your life. And then we just keep a record of that. The first thing I really want to be able to do is to get some campaign signs so that we can just, that's a really easy way to get information out there. We've also talked about, so I mentioned the student groups. Again, if you know anybody with podcasts, YouTube channels, magazines, blogs, anything, other community groups. There are a lot of homeowners associations, there are like community centers. I don't want to just be focused on like, say, the downtown area. Like I know some of you maybe made a good trip from somewhere. I appreciate that. It means a lot to me. So if you've got a community group or a community center, like organize an event, I'm happy to come out and do this all again. We can, you know, I want to reach Houstonians, you know, and we're a very diverse city. There's a lot of different people, a lot of different concerns. And, you know, we're not going to get this message to grow unless I'm out there. So I'm willing to hit the ground, willing to be out there talking to people. I'm also willing to, one of the things we used to do with activism, we just called it info jamming, but you can just call it flyering, call it whatever you want. There's a lot of big festivals in Houston. If any of you want to come with me, we get 5 to 10 people together with a bunch of flyers or, you know, something that has the campaign message and the ideas. We can get rid of thousands of flyers. We can talk to people. I've got somebody who's ready to print out 1,000 DVDs for me, even though less and less people use DVDs.
Yeah.
He's like, I got DVDs, man.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, well, I guess we could load these DVDs with my campaign videos and tell people, like, check this out if you like it. You know, I don't know. People are offering their help, and I'm willing to do it. So I'm going to need your support. If you can give financially, if you can give time, energy, if you're willing to go out there and talk to people, what have you. I would love to hear from you. I will be, of course, following up with everybody today. And if there's something specific that you think you have, you know, some resources or an expertise in, then please do let me know.
What's your website?
The website is just my name, DerrickBroze.com. And again, you can go on the first page, is my journey. It kind of gives you a little rundown of the longer version of what I shared with you guys earlier about just my kind of life journey. Then on the issues pages, it talks more about what we just did. There's also a videos page where every week, as I said, I'll be posting the campaign videos, I'll be posting the live streams. We do have a YouTube channel for anybody who wants to follow on that as well. And yeah, I mean, I think my main goal coming out of today would be to ask anybody who here right now thinks they can volunteer or want to volunteer in some way. Okay, so if you're slightly interested, we got about 6, 7 people. I would ask you guys to hang around for a couple minutes after everybody starts filing out and see what we can, like, let's not just leave today without some kind of like moving forward plan, right? Like I said, I had a gentleman call me who couldn't be here. I know there's other people who can't be here, people who might watch this video later and be like, oh man, I missed it. But I want to start meeting regularly with volunteers. And even, we don't necessarily have to meet in person. I know sometimes it takes gas, time, energy. We can get on a Skype call, we can get on, some sort of group chat, video chat, and get these ideas out there and talk about how we can work together. So that's what I want to do moving forward. But I also want to hear from you guys now. Are there any suggestions or any issues or things that you think are really important to you that I haven't touched on? Yes.
I have a strange question.
Sure.
Are you running as Democrat, Independent, or Republican?
Okay, the question.
I know the latter is a joke, but I'm
The question was, am I running under Democrat, Republican, this and that? So one of the other main reasons I was really excited about this race is that the city of Houston, officially, there are no party affiliations. So even though Sylvester Turner has been a lifelong Democrat and Tony Busby is pretty obviously a Republican, he's like backed by Rick Perry, I don't have to take an official stance. I don't want to pledge allegiance to any party.
Okay.
So I'm running as independent, if anything, but there's
So
there'll be no
whether
letter
people-
next to my name whenever you see it on the ballot.
So
It'll
either
just be Derrick
Republican or
Broze.
a Democrat can vote for you.
Anybody can vote for anybody. Yeah, absolutely.
I wasn't sure how that
Yeah,
worked.
on the local level, there's no like party registration, so vote as your mind calls to, your heart calls to. So, and that's what excited me, because honestly, I would be totally against this if I had to like sign. I don't know. I'm not doing that.
Yeah,
That's- Joe.
I always thought like a little box and like other political
Would be
party.
good.
The other political party,
Yeah.
you know, that anybody can join.
The oddballs.
Write it in. However you want to do it. Any other questions? Any ideas? Suggestions?
I have a couple things. So you said the Stingray surveillance. What is that exactly?
Okay, so a Stingray surveillance tool. It's also
or more so, who would it target?
it targets.
Everybody.
Okay, so it's known. The actual name of it is a cell site simulator.
Okay.
Stingray is just the nickname. That's what the Harris Corps calls their version of it, and it's basically a tool that can intercept your cell signal. So let's say in the ideal situation, they say they're going after dangerous criminals and terrorists and this sort of thing, and there's a drug house.
CPS investigation?
This who knows? It could be used against anybody, but
You don't know.
this is the way the cops claim that they're using it, and this is a big problem. There's a lot of secrecy about it. I was able to find out which department in HPD uses it, and it's supposedly just 4 or 5 officers who have access to it. But again, we have no information on what they're doing. How there could literally be a server that's just got files and files of information, because if they're coming to look for you because they suspect you of a crime or whatever, and they know where you live, but they don't know exactly, or they heard you in this neighborhood or something. Or the way I've seen it, they know somebody's in an apartment complex, so they drive all around the apartment complex trying until they get a ping. But in that process, they're gathering up everybody. It's not targeted to just one phone, and that's so
invasion of
there's been a
privacy.
lot of court. If you start looking into Stingrays, it's something I've followed for years. There's been a lot of different court rulings on it. It probably will one day make it to the Supreme Court eventually, because it's just a very invasive tool. HPD absolutely has it. They've had it since 2014. I questioned the police chief, the former police chief. He refused to acknowledge it, but we have the contracts, and so we know they have it. But that's because the corporation makes them sign a non-disclosure agreement saying that they won't talk about it. So it is so silly to think that like the cops become legally bound to a contract by a corporation to not tell the people what they're doing, what they're using.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And that
Okay.
tells you
Yeah.
right there that's wrong.
Yeah, I have a really big issue with immunizations and healthcare. Everybody seems to be sick and infected, and I've been doing some research on immunizations and finding people that are actually testing them, and there are weakened parasite eggs in the immunizations, and my child and I got very sick at one point, went to a naturopathic doctor, ended up doing all these protocols for parasitic, killing off parasites, and have seen major amounts of parasites coming out of our bodies. I mean, flukes that are like this long, parasites that are this long, and lately studying it more, people are that are testing it are finding that there are basically weakened eggs that they're injecting to our bodies, which cause disorder, cancer, mental health issues, behavioral issues, anger, depression. I mean, everything that we deal with that the medical industry profits off of us for. Does that make sense?
Are you saying through the vaccinations? Or
I mean, that's what some people are now researching. Like, autism parents are going, what the fuck is wrong with my kid's not okay. This isn't just a disorder. Let's find out what's going on. And they're actually discovering that it's a disease caused by pathogens in the body.
So what is your what's the position that you are interested in? Like, what do you want to see done about that? How would you approach that?
Finding out first off, what the hell they're injecting to our bodies, and not injecting them into our bodies, having the right to not do it, and having actual transparency. When I speak to the doctors about parasites, they have to. Yeah, it's like they become very uncomfortable. They try to gaslight me and invalidate everything that I say. They don't even want to look at the pictures that I found. So I just, we're so reliant on the medical industry that, and I just don't think that they're helping us. So I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I hear you. So for those who couldn't hear, her question or concern is in regards to, you're talking about parasites and health, but also specifically about, I think you're getting at people being forced vaccinated and things of that sort.
Right, and being misinformed.
And being misinformed, right?
Right, and
So,
not treated properly. Ineffective
not being treated properly.
Not getting to the root causes of the problem.
Absolutely. And I think one of the two things I think I said in relation to this would be the freedom of speech issue. The reason I think that's important is because it applies to everything, right? Because we're at a time and a place where what you just said, some people would probably not want you to say. Like, to not even ask the question. Like, because everybody here who heard what you said doesn't need to agree with you necessarily to hear it, right? And I think that's how we learn, that's how we have a conversation. But there are some folks who don't even want those conversations to happen.
Exactly.
And don't even want you to be able to ask that question to your doctor. Or if you ask that question to your doctor, you should be reporting
Or
on
they-
to somebody
they
else.
laugh
They don't,
at you
they
and call
don't,
you
or they
crazy.
decide to not return any of my calls.
And we're already seeing that these types of questions and concerns are being
Talk.
removed from social media, they're being removed from YouTube, from Instagram, from Pinterest, from Facebook groups, because there is a concern about, what they're calling misinformation. But I think at the end of the day, silencing people and trying to keep people quiet is never going to be the answer to it. We need dialogue. Otherwise, whether real or imagined, all you do when you censor people or prohibit something is you create conspiracies around it. Because whether or not it's legitimate or not, people are going to ask, well, why are we not allowed to talk about this?
Then we're called crazy.
And why are we being, demonized or this and that? So I think, again, I would absolutely stand for free speech, for having dialogue on these topics, and I would never support any attempt to force vaccinations, like whether that's because of a measles outbreak, or something along those lines. And again, I know that people could try to dream up, well, what about a polio, black plague, think of the most extreme situation, and there's always going to be extremes, but I just see that as it stands, the government should not be involved in forcing people to do things like that. Shouldn't be fining people, shouldn't be threatening people with punishment or jailing or fining or any of those things.
Another thing too, with disorders like ADHD, ADD, autism, there's no scientific evidence that they exist. It's just symptom and behavioral based is how they prove it, and then they medicate. There's no blood test. There's no evidence showing that this is
They're just
what causes it. Yeah, they're just diagnosing it and medicating, which isn't fixing the problem. There's no evidence that this is what it is. So a lot of people are now discovering that parasitic infection is causing all of this disruptance in the body by cleansing and going, look, this is a freaking worm. This just came out of my butt. You know what I mean? So yeah.
What was your name?
Danielle.
Thank you, Daniel, for that question. Lee?
I'm about to ask you one of those uncomfortable questions.
Let's do it.
I'm sorry. But we're both small government people, but right now Houston has a huge problem that is anything but small government because it's based on the city, the county, other counties, and developers. And it absolutely is in the domain of government because without government controlling it, it's what we have now because it's out of control. What do you think? What would your plan be to address the mess that is flooding in Houston?
I knew that's where you were going.
Oh boy.
Break that down further. Break that down further for those who aren't sure what you're referencing.
Okay, my house, in front of my house, I have a storm drain. That's the city. Behind my house, I have one of the ditches. That's the county. During Harvey, the street in front of my house was 2 feet higher than the ditch behind it because the city and the county don't talk. And then there's the next county that's outside and the development outside and all that
They don't
drainage
talk.
comes through my neighborhood. I didn't flood, thank God. But everybody in the city wants flood control to be better. Everybody in the city wants something to be done. They consistently vote for more money to be spent. The money's spent on anything but flood control.
Sure.
And nothing's being regulated. It's totally out of control. There's no retention ponds. Retention ponds are getting filled in by the school districts.
Houses.
And obviously this isn't something that's small, individuals can fill in potholes, but they can't dig out a retention pond that HISD just filled in. So what would you do?
Well, I want to ask you that. What do you think is the solution? Because like you're saying, there's multiple bodies involved in this, right? It's not just, this might be one where, the mayor with the stroke of a pen couldn't necessarily even just fix that. But what are the policies that a mayor or the city could take that would make that easier or make that process, flow better?
Frankly, I think better communication with the bureaucracies and actually spending the money on the projects that they were voted for would be a big help.
I know that there's a lot of concern about funds for Harvey not going to relief efforts and all these millions of dollars coming from the federal government coming from elsewhere, not going to where they're supposed to, where they're meant for, I guess you could say, right? So that sounds like that's probably, it's a bureaucratic problem, it's a government lack of communication.
And what, like EquuSearch a few years ago, they just did a X-ray survey of Houston and found over 1,000 cars in the bayou. They pulled out 100 just to see if they could find some of the missing people. That's all the money they had. That's all the budget they had. The other 900 are still in our bayous, and that might just affect water flow a little bit. Maybe.
It's been going on for at least 2 years that I know of. They'll go and they'll pull cars out.
Well, it's definitely an issue that I've been looking into because obviously it's not been my main focus immediately, but I think obviously that's an issue that concerns people in Houston. Like, we're going to have another hurricane at some point. There was just flooding a couple of weeks ago with some heavy rains coming in. Her family lives on a street that's constantly flooded. If it rains more than 10 minutes, it floods. So I know this is a real issue to help that is concerning the Houstonians. I think that for me the answer would be just like you're saying, open the dialogue. Like if I was in a position to have anything to say about it, well then I think the say would be, why are we not communicating? Why don't we meet with the county and talk about this issue? Or why is there not a public comment period where Houstonians, all the Houstonians, this will be a long public comment period, could come up and express how they're being affected by floods. You know what I mean? Like, because I think that's a big part of it sort of underlies every issue we've talked about here, is that Houstonians aren't being heard one way or the other, right? Whether you're talking about floods, you're talking about health, you're talking about these other issues. So I feel like that's probably, without just looking further into it right at the moment, and maybe me and you having some more conversations, I think that being willing to have those conversations, being willing to hear what people are complaining about, being willing to, like you said, I definitely don't want to be in charge of other people's money. But I think if there are funds that are already set there and they're there to help the people of Houston not be constantly flooded out, then at the very least we should make sure they're going to that, as opposed to somebody else's projects, or some other things like that. I know we're almost to 4, and I appreciate you guys taking a couple hours out of your day, but I want to make sure we get any other questions. Joe?
Mine's more idea. I think we should interview you in the back of a car going out Westheimer about how Sylvester Turner's done with the pothole issue.
You a beta one time.
Hey, let's do it. That sounds like...
We got the spot on Westheimer right there.
We'll just go up, back and forth.
Yeah. Oh, it's a long stretch.
All right, well, I'm down to do it.
I have an idea that I keep coming across. To get rid of anything large out of your yard, whether it's an appliance, whether you want to recycle it, or just trash or stuff, we have what do you call it? Junkyards? Landfills. Okay? But if you want to take your own truck and drive it over there, how much does it cost? I have never understood why, and one of the guys on Channel 11 right now is following up on the recycle thing. Why don't we do a better job at our recycling? But better yet, if we could clean up communities and then you could get your gardens. If we simply had a once a month or once every 6 months free day at the landfill. Now granted, the line would be long, like a Cardi B concert or something, but seriously, if you allowed one day for where people could come in and bring it because the cost is so exorbitant that they may want to clean it up, but they can't afford it.
Yeah, you need to talk to me about that. That's something I've been working on with the city for a while.
That's an idea I've had for a long time that I'm like, why has nobody ever approached this? It's something so simple.
Yeah. So where it stands right now, you're not allowed to just go take the waste that you find in the lot next to
the
your house
garbage guy won't
and
take
go take
it.
So you have to wait for the right day of the month or
You
whatever.
can,
Well, no,
but
there's
you need
but it's
a
like
current water bill at your address. It can't be an old water bill. It's got to be a current water bill. If you live in an apartment complex and you don't pay water, you can't go to the dump, even though you're paying for the dump.
Exactly.
I've gone through this with the city at length, and I actually got the flood control czar yelling at Public Works, going, "Why the hell is this the case? Because they're dumping tires in my bayou."
Right.
So this is something I've been working on with the city.
Promotes flooding.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And
because
it's
if we
an
had more
ongoing
bayou
issue.
cleanup days, Clear Creek cleanup, I mean, I volunteer for that every year. If we did all these simple, basic things.
Yeah.
I can give you names of people to yell at, and they're receptive to being
Oh,
yelled
honey,
at.
I'd be more than happy to. I've been called crazy so many times. People are like, Karen, what is it with you and your damn recycling? I'm like, reuse, reduce, recycle, or you're throwing it all away.
I
You
definitely
can't put
agree
it
with
all
you,
into the
Karen.
ground.
There's definitely a big issue with, there's several lots right on my street that are just piled up with all kinds of stuff right around the corner. It's
And that's just a small, simple, one little itty-bitty wedge of a huge pie of things
and
that
I also agree with
Houston
you
runs
that
smoother.
I think recycling is a big issue in the city because
Well,
for those who know, the mayor recently signed a recycling contract with a new company, right? But we all know that as well, the United States is not recycling most of their own stuff. There's been more and more awareness that for example, China's not going to be buying the U.S.'s plastic anymore. We're going to be in a situation where all this recycling that we're doing, reduce, reuse, recycle, it might not even be going towards what we think it's going. Much of it doesn't often get recycled. It gets shipped away and then dumped in some other community in some other country, or they're just dumping it in the landfill like we saw recently. So,
Okay, so
we have to
Channel
figure
11
out some
News,
issues for
what's
that.
it, Rogowski guy?
Yeah.
Okay, so he was doing, and if you go and look at his posts, you'll see me all over them. You will see me all over them because I have been a huge recycler for years. When I lived in Austin, I got started in 1984. So I recycle everywhere. I drive everybody nuts with recycling. And then when I'm sitting there watching these videos of these trucks going from blue in, green in, and this is not a one-time occurrence. And when they get the garbage truck guys to hide behind a screen, and this is what we're told to do. So it's not the garbage guys.
Yeah.
This is higher up. They're being told to not do their job
And
properly.
I think, like I said, it's the fact that most people
No
who
communication
don't
is all green.
recycle don't know that their stuff might not actually be recycled. I'm a
And
recycler
we
myself
waste
as
our
well.
time cleaning, and that's water wastage.
Yeah.
Time wastage.
Time wasted. Well, I think that there could be a way that the city could definitely encourage actual recycling companies to come to the city who are going to do recycling. Because, for example, I saw a recent report about the same issue in Australia. And out of all the different recycling companies in Australia, there was only one company that actually did the recycling themselves. The rest of them shipped it off to somewhere else. And it may or may not have actually been recycled. They followed it down the line and they found some of it in an indigenous community in Malaysia where they were literally saying, stop recycling, stop sending us your crap. And so, for all of our good intentions, we might be causing more damage than good, and it's because these facilities aren't actually doing
a worldwide thing.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
It's
But it starts with us here, right?
Bernie down to Derrick.
It starts with us right here.
But we've all got to pull together.
I agree with you, Joe.
But there's technology now you can find. It was here 20 years ago where you can put all of this into one, container. It'll burn the plastic for fuel, for energy. It'll turn the glasses. Even the battery acid goes this way. I mean, you're basically refining the different aspects of the trash. Because when you're separating it, the things we recycle, like plastic bottles and glass, is, in my opinion, the least things we should worry about. We need to be recycling car batteries and computer parts, which are the things that people just throw away over and over again.
I've got a stack of old computers that I don't know what to do with.
Separate all that
Yeah, well,
already.
Fry's does
I got a guy for you.
now. I recently went into
Oh,
Fry's.
you're my computer guy.
And then Best
Well-
Buy, where they have all that you can do the bulbs and batteries and laptops and.
But like Joe
But again,
says,
that might be PR.
the average
They
person
charge
isn't
for
doing
They
that,
charge you for
unfortunately.
TV. I tried to get rid of one of them big lug TVs. I drug it around from place to place, went around to Houston Recycling Place that said, oh, we do, and then I get there and no. I ended up finally, after 6 months of trying everything I could think of, I went back to an old apartment complex, went whoop, right in the dumpster, it went, because I didn't know what else to do with it. I was tired of looking at it. I had tried everything, called, talked, emailed.
And I think you're definitely not alone on that. There's a lot of people who don't know how to
And it's frustrating
recycle
because there's no
what they have.
information out there.
Yeah, no, there's a lack of that. Like you said, Joe, people are throwing computers with lithium-ion batteries. They're throwing old phones, and that's leaching out into dumps. It's getting into other communities. It's getting into water. It's getting into soil. This is just to throw an idea out there. Years ago, we had this program when we were trying to get off the ground, where we were trying to. There's some machines out there. Who here is familiar with 3D printing? This is gonna be the last thing I say. I'm gonna wrap up here.
Oh, and that's scary
So,
right there.
3D printing, this is a positive way to use it. There was one device, a 3D printer, that could take plastic bags as well as other plastic material, and could repurpose it into basically the ink and 3D printers, which is the little filaments, the little balls. So we started thinking of what would it look like if we created a program where we started having a citywide cleanup. We go around picking up plastic, picking all this stuff. Then you recycle that, turn it into 3D printed garden tools, 3D printed what have you. Actually take that
Trash
waste and turn it
cans or
into something valuable. Then you go say maybe to some of those in the homeless population and say, do you want to volunteer at this community garden? Do you want to actually get some produce? Here's some tools that we 3D printed with the waste from the ground here in Houston. There are technologies that, like you said, Joe, that do exist. We don't have to be. We're the 4th biggest city in the country. There's lots of oil money and all this kind of stuff in the city, but definitely there are parts of the city that are living in a different time. We're not. They want to bring in 5G. And they say that it's going to help in all these different ways. While we're still struggling with basic stuff already. So I think that's a big part of the problem. The mayor doesn't want to talk about these issues. He's ready to race forward to make Houston be the first city. He said it himself, like, we're going to be #1 before Dallas, before Austin. It's like a silly kind of pride ego thing, right? So I don't want to take too much more of your guys' time, other than just to say I really appreciate it. I really do want to thank each of you for taking some time out of your Sunday afternoons. I'm open to ideas on other days that work better for other people if Sunday's not convenient. And again, for those who want to volunteer, if you haven't filled out the form written your name down, let me know. We'll try to maybe just have like an online call so we don't all have to drive every time we want to meet. But we will expect to have this kind of get together at least on a monthly basis. And again, if you have a community, if you live in a neighborhood that might be interested in hearing about these ideas, I humbly ask that you make some effort to find out that information. Let me know who I need to contact. I'll send the emails. Let me know who I need to call, and we'll make it happen. And other than that, guys, I really appreciate your time. This is going to be, I think, a fun 5.5 months together. If I have your support, I do think we can reach a lot of people. Thank you. I'd like to get a picture with all of you guys up here. If you are cool with that before everybody starts leaving. Can we all get a picture together? First event kickoff, whoever wants to be on camera. I'm gathering your information.
I'll be on camera with it.
Don't be shy, the police already have our picture.
I got a warrant.
Hey, if you got a new driver's license with the star on it, they already have it. Because you have to go in there and do this, and now for 5 points.